of Stale, I would like to introduce today's presenter, Greg Mikulski. So Greg taught intermediate and senior science in Toronto for 30 years. He retired ahead of any major devastating explosions in the lab. Minor harmless ones were always enjoyed. Part of his spare time is now spent volunteering for the nonprofit organization Seeds-to-Saplings, where he continues to enjoy developing hands-on science for students. So I'm going to turn it over to Greg at this point.
All right. Thank you very much, Aruj, for agreeing to moderate today. Much appreciated. And a big fat welcome to anyone who's listening in. I must say I'm impressed to be here on a Saturday morning at 9 a.m. no less. Quite an impressive feat. So 3 gold stars for all of you. I remember, when I used to go to workshops and presentations in the past, my gold standard for a successful workshop was to be able to leave with some kind of takeaway that I could potentially use the next day in class. So I hope at the very least, I might be able to provide that for you today. So again, welcome. I would love to and prefer to be in person with all of you. Of course, the times are dictating a virtual presentation, but I guess the silver lining there is that people can attend from far away if it's hard to travel. So I just hope in this format, the computer gods are smiling on us today and I won't drop connection. So, but even if that happens, my moderator, Aruj, has a backup plan. So anyhow, let's get rolling. As the title suggests, the talk of today is about encouraging students to hopefully be able to grow native trees in the classroom. And, my goal is to show you that that's quite possible and in fact, quite easy. I'm going to share my screen here. And all right, so right away you see a picture of yours truly. And not because I'm narcissistic, but I put this slide up. This was taken a few months ago. And I point out that I am, now hold on a second. Can you see my screen there, Rouge?
Yes, I can.
Oh yeah, okay, there we go. So yes, what you see before you is an historically incompetent gardener. So in the past, when people used to give me the occasional plant, it would usually, unfortunately, die a slow, sad death. I was never blessed with physiologically a green thumb. Many of the volunteers that I work with are in the master gardener category. Sadly, I am not one of those. I'm not a botanical whisperer. And, typically, the biology I did do tended to focus more on things that would crawl around. I just didn't have much of a background in the plant sciences. And in fact, most of my teaching was more in the physical science realm. So I point this out to you really with this take-home message that if this chump here can grow a tree successfully, anyone can do it, a grade 3 student, no problem. So it really is quite easy to do, if you follow the simple steps. So that's something to keep in mind. How did I get involved in this endeavor? Well, a few years ago, before I retired, I had a friend who in turn had a contact who was a researcher at University of Toronto in the forestry department. And this researcher had collected a number of acorns, hundreds of acorns from around the GTA from old growth oak trees, and was trying to germinate them in the hopes that others could grow the acorns into saplings. So he reached out to a few different schools to see, before the germinating seeds were spoiled and lost, reached out to see if a few schools could help with some space to try growing them. So we were happy to oblige. And so with some volunteer students and the researcher and friend that came over, we planted about 200 different acorns in the hopes that they would sprout. And here's just a few of them. Here's about 30 of them here. We grew a number of them we had a little adjoining room off the science lab with a southern exposure to sun. And then with many of them, we needed some space to to grow them. So we found a hallway that had a nice big window that was south facing. So this is what you see here. And I wasn't sure how it was going to turn out. And I got to say that I was quite impressed. Well over 90% of any of the acorns we planted sprouted and started growing into seedlings. Just like a third dose COVID vaccine, greater than 90% success rate. So we were quite happy about that. Then a few months later, we went outside, and it just happened that we had existing at our school some planter boxes that were used in past years with other grades. And we asked if we could have a few of them to transfer some of the seedlings to. So there you can see us planting there in the planter boxes. And this very first attempt at growing the native trees, it worked, as I say, that was a good part. But the model that was used by a few of the pilot schools was to build these planter boxes on school property and then grow them in the planter boxes. And, it's a nice, ambitious idea, but not always the most practical, particularly if you're in an inner city school. You just don't have a lot of space to have planter boxes. The resources might not be there. I mean, to grow a good planter box could be $1,000 of lumber and soil and so forth. You might need expertise in building it. Sometimes you need union members to build on site. So it was a neat idea, but we could see that a number of teachers might be scared away from trying it, just because it seemed like there's a little too involved to do that whole series of steps. So a few of us got together after from a few of the different schools that tried it, and we discussed, is there a way we could make it easier for both the student and the teacher? And the other drawback with this method was that the students would leave in June with their seedlings sprouting, and then it was up to the custodial staff to water them over the summer, put a protective covering over them so the animals wouldn't get them. And it took the responsibility off the students to keep nurturing the seedlings. So it was a great first attempt, but really that's where this organization, Seeds-to-Saplings, came from, was teachers looking at modifying it so it was more workable for everyone. And that's really what I'm going to talk to you about today. All right. So yeah, just saplings were transferred outdoor there. Now, I don't know if any of you remember this. So some of you may have, as younger students way back, maybe in middle school, you might have had the project where you had to look after an egg for a few weeks or a few days or a few weeks to protect the egg, to give you a sense of what parenting and responsibility is like. That was the old school version of that project. Then, of course, that morphed into a more modern version. You can see the Tamagotchi on the right. Don't know if you ever had one of those or had kids that played with those. But the point is that, and what I found is that anytime students were given something to look after, if it was living, I was always pleasantly surprised by how they would step up, and it would bring out their nurturing side. And I taught mostly in a school with boys, and I remember I'd have big testosterone-laden grade 10 rugby players coming in, and we did a project in grade 10 one year where it was part of the biology unit, and there was a chapter on plant biology. And just to give them something more hands-on to do, I dug up there was some packages of old vegetable seeds lying around in the lab. So that became the grow off competition, who was the best farmer in the class. And we had 3 months of growing, and whoever grew the most biomass won a prize at the end. Anyhow, I was very surprised by every day, the students would rush in, and the first thing they do is they check their plants and nurture them. Sometimes we had live creatures in the lab, and they were tasked with looking after them. So the bottom line was, and this is a real bonus I find of this project, is that anytime students have an opportunity to nurture, they will often surprise by how much they get into it. So that's just a nice little spin-off. All right, so here's the good news for you. All the heavy lifting has been done for you. You don't have to reinvent the wheel here. All the instructions for this project are put together on our website that we've created over the last year. This is, by the way, and just let me mention that this is a not-for-profit endeavor, so no one's looking to have you subscribe to anything. You don't have to pay anything for it. We're just some educators that would love to see more kids try this project. And as I say, the good part for you is that all this is laid out for you as we'll take a quick look at our website. So that's the website we've set up. And let me just, I'm going to bop around here to the next. I think I've loaded up. Where are we? It's all right. Okay, I think well, let me go here. It's all right. I've lost my, here's my first little tech issue.
Is it the website you're looking for, Greg?
Yeah, I thought, hold on. No, I thought I had, okay, well, here we go here. So here's the homepage. If you just go into the Seeds to Saplings, you land on the homepage, which, you can see, you can scroll down and it's just got some really rudimentary information on the homepage there. But just to show you at the top, you can just navigate around in the tabs and maybe just to acknowledge my my colleagues. It shows here, there's, hopefully this will load. Yeah, it'll just show very quickly. We have a volunteer team of about 8 of us, and a little background here of the people. And we have some advisors through U of T that we can call on if we have some technical questions. So I'm just one of 8 people. I just happen to be the one presenting today, but we've got some dedicated volunteers that help run this little endeavor. And there's resources for teachers that you can get into in various grades based on the grades. So there are lots of resources that you can call upon. There's background in terms of why would it be good to try this project with more background information. What's probably most relevant getting going here is the tab here, the Grow a Native Tree. And you'll see that right away, just to get general background about the project, you can hit project background and it jumps into all kinds of information about, why do this project, talks a little bit about the ravine in the GTA and some of the issues affecting it. And then you will see what's quite relevant to you. There's a tab that's dedicated for teachers. And so there's some tips to help you, the teacher, really put it all in perspective at the beginning. And as I scroll down here, one of the things you'll notice is that there are curriculum links that are put in here. So the nice thing with this project is it can be done at so many different levels. There's so many ties into ecology, the environment, plant science, invasive species, sustainability, climate change. At so many levels, this project can fit. So here are just 4 of the grades. We just put down, and you can click on them and it goes into more detail about how it ties into specific objectives for the science curriculum and so forth. So just point that out. There is, just to get started in the project with students, again, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel, you'll see here that there's a PowerPoint that you can download, and that just shows a very introductory PowerPoint for kids just to get them oriented in what the project's about. So here we go here. I think I loaded it up already. I'll just go through it very quickly. I know it's quite basic, but just to show you that you could show that, you can edit it yourself if you like and put in whatever slides you want to add in. But just to show you quickly, this is what I would probably do each year if I did this project. I would just start by showing, okay, here's what we're going to try this year. Let's give it a go. And we'll just quickly go through it. So why would it be useful to take up the challenge? Well, you can see us here planting the seedlings. So obviously doing this project is a big win for the environment in multiple ways. And you've probably all heard of the government's endeavor to try to plant 2 billion trees by the year 2030. So it kind of nicely taps into that idea as well. I recently read or heard a plant scientist, being interviewed about it, and they said, well, remember, you got to plant the right trees. It's just not about planting any old tree. And that's one of the things that this project focuses on, is making sure we plant the right tree. And there's a link to that endeavor by the government there that you can, students can take a look at. And why would they do this? Of course, well, trees, as you know, have a multiple benefits in the environment, food, shelter for creatures, the whole photosynthesis link with providing humans with and other animals with oxygen, many spin-off mental health benefits as well, especially during COVID. It's been great for people to get out into the forests, for industry. And but of course, there are two other big reasons for encouraging tree growth in the environment. And one of them, of course, is biodiversity, and which of course refers to the sum total of all the living things in the environment. And of course, a healthy environment has more biodiversity in it. So that's one key aspect in improving biodiversity. And on that note, the two tree species that we focus on that we feel are easiest to grow are the northern red oak and the sugar maple, for reasons I'll mention in just a minute. But the important thing is those species, being native here in Ontario, support literally often hundreds of other different animals during their life cycle. One of the best resources that I came across that really highlights why we do this project, I don't know if you can see this, it's called The Nature of Oaks by Doug Tallamy, who's a real guru in trying to get people to rewild with native species. Anyhow, this book, The Nature of Oaks, it's very easy to read. I'm a slow reader, and I got through this in a couple sittings, and it highlights how seasonally, how vital a tree, a foundational tree like the oak is in terms of supporting so many creatures. So it really does add to the diversity of the forest. And of course, invasive species, those are the ones we don't want to be planting. It's interesting that, I think I put this little stat here. There was a ravine study done in the Toronto area, in the Toronto ravine system, about 40 years ago. And when they did a preliminary study, they found about 10% of the tree species in the ravine were invasive species. 40 years later, they redid the study, the analysis, and they found that about 40% of the trees were invasive. And so the trend is not good. A lot of people look at the GTA ravine and think, oh, it's beautiful, green, nice and shady. But there's a real concern about amongst foresters about how the invasives are crowding out the natives and really affecting biodiversity. So that's quite a scare. As a matter of fact, I read an article in the New York Times a few weeks ago talking about, lately, of course, you've been aware of the whole COP26 conference, and there was a real focus and highlight on greenhouse gas emissions and the burning of fossil fuels, and rightly so. But I think a lot of people forget about the other big twin threat, which is the lack of biodiversity and what's happening there. They likened it in the article to the planet being like a car that's a little bit broken. So if you have a dead battery and you have a big hole in your gas tank, well, you can fix the dead battery. Let's call that climate crisis. But until you fix the gas tank, the car won't run. So the broken gas tank is like the concern about the lack of biodiversity. So this is something that we really want to bring students' attention to as well, is that it's so important to have native trees in there because all the creatures around benefit in a big way. So, all right. So that's reason number one. And then of course, here, you can try this. You can test your own skills as a naturalist here. These were 5 species that are often associated with part of their life cycle in trees in Ontario. See how many of these 5 you might be able to identify off the top of your head. And we will give you the answers here. So of course, when you're doing this with the kids, you can maybe even offer a prize to see who can get the most of these right without much research at the beginnings. So these are 5 different species here that are associated with trees in Ontario. So again, just a reminder that it's important to make sure we keep those other species around by growing healthy native trees. All right, and of course, the other big issue that we just hinted at, climate change and the climate crisis, climate emergency as it's called. And the big link here to growing native trees is that, again, tying it back to the old photosynthesis equation, you can see carbon dioxide going in, and therefore plants are great CO2 absorbers, which helps bring down atmospheric carbon dioxide. Slide here on a reminder of why increasing carbon dioxide levels are a concern about in terms of the greenhouse situation, and just a reminder that planting more trees benefits everyone in that regard. So, and then, you can lay it out for students in the big picture. Here's the project, big picture wise. Really, there's just 3 parts to this project over the year. And the first part is, if you're going to grow native trees, of course, you're going to need seeds. So the students in the fall, they have to collect seeds. They then have to prepare the seeds. You can imagine if you're northern red oak and you're dropping acorns in October, it's not going to be a good survival strategy if those acorns start sprouting in December when there's limited sunlight, temperatures are cold. So in nature, of course, for oak acorns to successfully germinate, and same with the sugar maples, by the way, they do need to go through a cold period of cold storage to mimic winter. And then they will germinate in the spring. So that's part of the preparation. And the second step is students literally put the seeds in bags and store them in the fridge for a few months. It's very easy to do, and I can show you how to do that. And then finally, in the late winter, early spring, once the seeds are sprouting and germinating, then you get them to start growing in the classroom. And so that's really it, those 3 steps. What are the best types of trees to grow? Well, as we've hinted, and these are tried and tested, and that's the good part. We've now done this with a few pilot schools, and as volunteers, we've all tried growing them. And I got to say, so far, great success rate. As you guys know, there's nothing worse than, a science lab or an experiment, and it doesn't work properly. So I can say that myself, anytime I've tried growing, the seedlings, there's a very high success rate. So that's a really nice aspect of this project. So the northern red oak, we would recommend is maybe option 1A. Good thing is with both of these trees, they're very easy to find in most neighborhoods and parks. So not only are they generally ubiquitous in the environment, but again, they're also quite easy to grow. It's interesting that, the Ojibwe word for red oak is, if I get this right, I think it was Wisagi mitigomes. So I hope I didn't fumble that pronunciation. But, obviously, as, we hinted at with the land acknowledgement that was read earlier, people have been here for hundreds and hundreds of years. And even back then, Indigenous communities recognized the importance of the oak tree as a foundational species. So now finally, in the last few decades, scientists are really, recognizing how important these foundational species are. So northern red oak and the sugar maple are the best to grow. And the other great thing about these two is that they drop their seeds in the fall. You can overwinter them. The students can overwinter them in their fridge, and then they can grow them in late winter, early spring. So both of these trees, the whole growing cycle taps in perfectly to the school year. So, there are other tree species, obviously, that are native that you can grow fairly easily, but the timing is not so good. Like, for example, they might be dropping their seeds in late spring, early summer. So, you want the students to, to experience this project over the course of the year. And that's another reason why these 2 species are great to use in the classroom. Okay, and all the instructions, as I said, as I'll show you quickly, are all on the website. So again, you don't have to think this out and research it. It's all been done for you. And there's the website link there. So so that is a quick little PowerPoint that you could get students introduced to. Let's, sorry, actually, I am going to go back into here because I'll show you maybe before we leave the teacher page, a couple other things. You'll notice up here, we've embedded a little project timeline in here for you. So if you just click on the arrow, you can see that the seed collection down below in the calendar, that's basically mid-September to mid-October, where the kids are out there, again, not you, ideally, the students are out there in their neighborhood, in the park, getting the seeds for themselves. Then they have to, again, prepare the seeds in a simple way and store them in their fridge. And that's, with both these species, they usually need 90 to 120 days of cold storage before they start to germinate. So you can see October to often the end of January. Then you start growing the plants in the classroom or at home if you wish. And one of the really nice features, and I'll talk about this again in a few minutes, is and this is, I think, one of the more unique aspects of this particular project. You know, many people have tried growing the native plants, will grow them in soil, which makes sense. That's what happens usually in nature. But as an add-on to this project with the oaks, you can grow them hydroponically. Just with a jar and some water, you put the germinating acorn at the top, and this beautiful plant starts emerging. And it's amazing how quickly it grows. And that's one of the real advantages to also growing a couple of the acorns hydroponically, is literally kids can see from one day to the next measurable root growth. They can see the roots growing in the water, and it's measurable from one day to the next. And it looks kind of cool. So we found that the kids really groove off of that, the hydroponic growth, because it's so visual. You see the entire process from the top of the plant down through the roots, and you can see how extensive the roots are. Whereas if you're doing it just in the soil, you have to wait usually a few weeks for the sprouting and the leaves to come out, and you don't see the root growth underneath. So you know, that we really encourage people to try the hydroponic growth as well. And then you can also, we recommend to also grow a few in soil more traditionally along with the hydroponics. And then after, you know, 6-7 weeks of the hydroponic growth, we recommend then you transfer those to soil for more traditional growth. So there's, you know, a little step to do there. While that's all happening, you know, students can check their neighborhood or their yard for a place where they might want to plant any seedlings and saplings that grow. And then we recommend students to, after a few months of growth indoors, then they can slowly introduce their growing plants outdoors to a process called hardening off, which is basically just getting the plants used to outdoor weather and changing temperatures, as opposed to being indoors where that's much more regulated in terms of the environment. So, you know, a few weeks of that, and then you can just leave them outside as the weather gets nicer. And then, of course, you can plant them in the spring, you can plant in the fall. You can either, if you want, you can grow them for an extra season before you plant. So there are many options in terms of the planting. And yeah, so that gives you a little timeline as a teacher, just to remind you of the timing that you'll need throughout the year. So some people find that helpful. I'm going to scroll down here, and it shows various materials that can be used for the project. We've tried to focus on really simple materials, ideally recyclable ones. You know, we wouldn't advise people to go and buy a plastic container just for this project, but if in their recycle bin there are plastic containers, which there often are, then those, before they get to the ultimate recycling destination, why not use them in the interim as planters? So these are all simple containers. If kids don't have planters, really easy to use. We've tried them, they work well. So simple materials. For the hydroponic parts, you can see there's some glass jars down below. Those are a little more robust, obviously, and those are nicer for the hydroponics. I think visually they look nicer, and they're also a little sturdier, so they hopefully won't spill over. Obviously, some soil would be needed. A lot of kids who have, you know, homes with gardens, there's soil that's easy to find at home. However, as you know, few bags of soil for your classroom cost next to nothing from the garden center. So having some soil around is needed. And some general tips are in here. And we've even included some good questions that you might bake into the project where, you know, that can be part of the overall assessment and assignment. Kids could answer these questions. You can add yours to them. So, you know, we've tried to think of a few good questions ahead of time that you might want to use. So this is all just part of the teacher page to help you plan it out. And then, of course, the real nuts and bolts is when you get to the project itself. It breaks it down into the 3 steps: the collecting of the seeds, the growing step by step, and the planting part. So if I click on here, collect and prepare, then it goes through the process. You've got not only the red oaks that you can try, but also here they're the sugar maples. So a little bit of background on the red oaks, and then how to identify, you know, the red oak species, some little tips and hints. If you hover over, it gives you the clues. One thing that I loaded up on my phone in the spring, and probably some of you already have this, there's some great apps out there that allow you just take a picture of a plant, whether it's the leaf, the bark, the flower, and you just take the picture, load it in the app, and it tells you what you're looking at. It's brilliant. So Leaf Snap, iNaturalist, there's a number of apps that do that, and kids can find that very helpful to confirm which tree they're collecting from. But the northern red oak is the most easy to find and most reliable in terms of collecting the seed. So again, during mid-September, mid-October, they go and collect the acorns. Here's a picture that, you know, we recommend. Pick mature oak trees that we tell the kids to do the old hug test. So if at chest height, they can't completely envelop their arms around the tree, that's probably a good tree to use. You know, to get the seeds from, because it's established and it's been there a while. Anyhow, you'll see as you go through all the instructions step by step. We did put in there for those that are good statisticians and like to perform good science. You can download a simple data record. Let me just see here. I think yeah, here we go. I loaded it up already. And when you click on there, it just loads through a simple data chart where you can that each student can log, you know, the number of seeds they collected, which ones were, of the ones they collected, which ones were viable, how many germinated, of the ones they planted, how many grew. So it's very easy to keep a good record. You know, you want to encourage them to be good recorders in terms of their observations. And ideally, it'd be great if a class at the end that tries this, if you put that into a spreadsheet, send it to us. We'd love to get as much data as we can to see how it's working. So that's provided for you as a link too. So anyhow, we go down here, step by step, how to collect the acorns. We've even embedded in here little snippets of videos. So the old adage, you know, the picture/videos worth many, you know, words of text. So not only is it step by step in black and white text there, but a lot of the steps are just recreated with video. Unfortunately, that's me in there. Ideally, I'd love to get students to redo these videos instead of us, but we just wanted to put something up for now that's obvious. So sorry about that. That's me sometimes you see in there. Anyhow, and then they do like a simple float test on the acorns. The ones that tend to be healthy sink to the bottom. The ones that have been compromised either by insects getting in there or not as much moisture or fungus, whatever, tend to float. They skim those off the top, recycle those out in the environment, and keep the ones that have sunk. And then it shows them, again, step by step, how to just bag the good seeds. And there's a couple simple ways they can do. Put it in the fridge and you know, wait a couple months, just checking on them occasionally, making sure the bag is moist for the seeds. And then so that shows how to do it all for the northern red oak, and then there are instructions for sugar maple as well. Ideally, if you could do both species with your class, that'd be fantastic, both northern red oak and sugar maple. The oaks, as some of you may be aware, they don't drop their acorns as reliably every year. Sometimes they have what's known as a mast year, where a particular oak will drop thousands of acorns, and then the next year, not very many. So you just have to be aware that when you're out sending kids off to collect acorns, not every tree may be, dropping acorns reliably. So, and if you happen to get a year where it's hard to find them, again, the sugar maples are usually quite abundant. But the ideal for the kids is a little more exciting, have them grow both species. So all those instructions are here. The one thing you don't want to do is, it tells you here, make sure the kids do not collect maple key seeds from the Norway maple. That's an invasive. Many of them are planted in neighborhoods. They look nice, they grow well, but they outcompete the native ones. And one of the big issues with the invasives, as you may know, is that they haven't evolved, they haven't co-evolved with the insect and the birds that have been here for thousands of years. So most plants have toxins, and the native species have insects that have learned to handle feeding with those plants. So when you put invasives in, again, you just don't get the biodiversity there. And Norway maples are a great example of that. So we remind students, pick sugar maple. There's a few clues here that show you how to do that. Let me just see here. I thought I had this. Yeah, in our Instagram account, we put up there a simple picture that if you can make a mustache from the maple key, that's the invasive Norway. So you don't want to do that. Makes a good mustache, but not much else. And oh, sorry, here we go. And if you can pinch your nose, there's a sugar maple key. So it's an easy way for kids to remember which is the invasive and which isn't. So, sorry, let me get back here. Oh, sorry. Overshot the runway. There we go. And anyhow, so it shows how to prepare the sugar maples. That's even easier than the oaks. So both are here with videos embedded. So very easy to collect and prepare the seeds. Let me then go quickly to where are we? Sorry, I'm zipping through. The next important step is the growing part. And again, it highlights in here both by word and video how to plant and grow each of those species. The standard is growing the acorns in soil and the planters that they've made, and that goes very well. And very successful, shows by video how to do it. It also shows, so that's just setting up the soil, but then it shows in here how to grow them hydroponically as well. And again, very simple to do. The ideal, if there was an ideal for how to set up this project with a group of students, it would be, you'd want to have the students for the whole year so that in the fall, they could collect the seeds and then prepare them. In the spring, you could do all this growing and then the ultimate planting. If you have a semestered program, then the second semester, of course, works really well, because even if they're not collecting the seed in the fall, you could do that for them and then just give them the germinating seeds in the spring. But ideally, a group that has it all year round would be fantastic, because then they can go through the entire process. And that's why maybe sometimes the middle school is ideal, because they tend to not be semestered. You see them all year round. So how to grow them, it's all in here with video. I'm going through this very quickly, but it's quite simple. In 1 hour, you could go through this entire website and basically be an expert in what to do here. And then there's some transplanting options that are put in here, but and then the sugar maple, how to do it here. We don't do hydroponic growth with the sugar maples, but in soil it works very well. So you can see there that you get a full comprehensive set of instructions for how to do all this. The final step is, you can see planting. I won't go into all that, but it tells you how to plant. Yeah, it's all there. All the instructions are there. So that's the good part for you. So let me go back here. I'm almost done here, and then I can take some questions. So ideally, as mentioned, you've got the same group of students throughout the years to do this project. What we would recommend is, if a student could do 2 saplings at school in the classroom, in the lab, so 1 in soil and 1 hydroponically, and then they do the same thing at home. The reason we recommend to do 4 saplings is that in case one doesn't take, you've got 4 there that a very high probability that at least one of those 4 will grow well. Our experience is most, if not all, grow well, but you've got a backup. The other nice thing about doing some of them at home, it gets the family involved too, and the kids can explain what's going on, and more eyes are on the project learning, so it's a nice backup. So that's what we would ideally recommend. Of course, to do that in the classroom, in the lab, you need some space. And we recognize that not all classrooms, not all labs have appropriate space or windows with lighting. Some options, you can find other places in the school, other classrooms that have sufficient lighting, and you can have them growing there. Again, we grew a lot of ours in the hallway of our school. And the nice thing was it got a lot of people involved in seeing what was going on. And put a poster up beside the plants to educate people. So that's an option. If the space is not there for other windows, you could put grow lights there that could work. Or if no space at the school is available, have the kids do the whole project at home, but they record nowadays, as you know, with the phone, you can take all kinds of pictures. So the kids record every few days pictures of their plants. That can all be part of their final assessment that they hand in at the end, the printed photos to show that they've been doing it at home. So there are many workarounds here to get this project to go and tailor it as it works for you. All right, and then so in summary, quickly then, we would say this project, the good thing is it's hands-on, right? It's always great to have more hands-on projects for kids. And as we know, students love the hands-on part. It's very relevant in today's world with all the environmental issues. And I got to say, when I used to do, in grade 9, there was a sustainability unit, in grade 10, climate change. When we would discuss a lot of the problems right now, I felt kind of bad because a lot of the students would feel kind of both helpless and hopeless when they looked at the future. Here is something that they can actually do in their own corner of the world and feel they're doing something tangible. So that's a great bonus. It's easy to do. You can do it at multiple age levels. Even if you don't think it would work with a school group in terms of a typical class, there's so many environmental clubs at schools. It's a great project for an environmental club if you want to do it with them. You can do the project at school, at home, ideally at both, or either. So, and again, the best part, all the heavy lifting's been done for you. You just have to jump in and follow the instructions. And here's, I think, one really neat part of the project. Imagine, a student 20, 30, 40 years from now, going back, periodically over that time and watching their tree grow that they've grown from a little baby seed that they've invested their time in. And, I think it's kind of neat to think that they could follow that through. And again, feel that, hey, I grew that tree. It wouldn't be there if it wasn't for me. And look how it's doing. So that's kind of a neat little future aspect of it. And makes students good stewards of the environment, I think. So reminder, we started up a little Instagram post as well, where we encourage students and teachers to use the Instagram account, and we'll send out, usually once, twice a week, just little tips or reminders to the students so that they can use that. As we know, kids are very tied into all that social media. Extra incentive, if you try this and you can submit a photo of a classroom, one of your classrooms trying this before June of next year, send us a photo. We'll send you a prize t-shirt. Now, this slide we just put together quickly with our logo, but the real shirt is being custom made right now. It looks a lot sexier than this one here. This was just to show you that that's a t-shirt, but there you go. There's an extra little prize for you if you try it and you send in a picture of your class giving it a go. So, and do you need seeds? Well, you might say, oh man, I missed the boat already. All the seeds have dropped. I can't do this project. Recognizing that, especially with COVID, it's been hard to function as normal classrooms over the last couple of years. Many of us have, there I am acting as a squirrel, collecting my acorns. I collected hundreds of acorns from a variety of oak trees this fall, as did some of my other volunteer colleagues. So we have some right now in the fridge, stratifying, that's the term they use to the cold storage. And you can reach out. There's a Seeds-to-Saplings email address. I've included it there. I even put my own email in there. So if somehow you don't get a response or not the one you're looking for, feel free to reach out to me, and we can set it up so that we can get you some seeds in the early year, January, February, that are ready to go with a classroom that you could jump into it then. Of course, the ideal is that after you try it once and you see it, then every year you get your own students to do all that seed collecting. But certainly for this year, if you need seeds later, just get in touch. All right, and there I am, the non-gardener in the group. That's one of the seedlings that I grew. It's in the ground right now. I hope to go back and revisit it. I put some protective screen on it to keep it safe for the next little while. You don't see it there, but I put that on it afterwards. And so again, let me read it. If I can do it and have success with it, then anyone can. And I got to say, I really got into it, and I'm looking forward to experimenting and trying different trees and different techniques with the growth. And that's a great idea with your own students. You can modify this and have them try different growing techniques. There's just so much good science that can come out of this project, and so many good spin-offs that are baked right in there. So, okay, so I've gone through very quickly. I know I'm bombarding you with information, but certainly at this point, I'm going to stop sharing my screen here. And then if any of you have any questions at this stage, I'd be happy to answer them. So.
Thank you so much, Greg. We really appreciate you sharing your knowledge on this topic. And so if there are any questions, please do type them in the chat. And I'm just going to share my screen now. So we would also like to thank our platform sponsor, Explore Learning, for supporting the Zoom platform for this session. Please don't forget to fill out the survey form before exiting. I am going to stop the recording at this time, and then if you would like to unmute yourself and ask the question or put your question in the chat, we would love to answer all your questions.
Let me see, I can pull up the questions here. So maybe I'll just quickly go through. Oh, here we are. Oh, okay, so one question is from Christopher. How long would you recommend putting the protective screening on the saplings before letting them grow on their own? Excellent question. If they're very young and, they've been less than a year old and you've planted them in the ground there, again, and we're all new to this too. We're all just trying this out ourselves. This is the first year we've actually done it, but probably a year or two, for sure, if you can, just to prevent, browsers from chewing on the leaves or someone trampling